What's up guys, I'm Dean and welcome back to my channel for my monthly movie diary where I go through every movie I watched that month and I give it a score out of 5 and just give you my vague thoughts. I do this every month, so if you haven't seen it before, just subscribe so you can stick around for every month. But let's just jump into it. The first movie I watched this month was a new movie, and that new movie was Jungle Cruise, and I thought it was completely and utterly fine. It was inoffensive. It was one of the most bland movies I've ever seen in my life, but it was pretty fun. Jack Whitehall was good in it. Dwayne Johnson was a weird choice for the role, I think, but Emily Blunt was really good as well. It had its good moments. It was just bland and it didn't look great. I gave it 2.5 stars. The next movie I watched was Jurassic Park. I watched it for my podcast HD Movie Talk. Link will be up there if you want to, or is it? It's up there, isn't it? The link will be up there if you want to go and check that out. Jurassic Park is, of course, a classic. It's kind of soft-core horror is brilliant. The cast is perfect. Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill and Laura Dern are 3 actors who I adore. I gave it 4.5 stars. It is timeless. It still looks amazing. And it pioneered a lot of modern-day cinema. It's just excellent. The next movie I watched was The Suicide Squad. I also talked about this on my podcast. And I also did a review for it on this channel. So go up there. I did it again, up there, if you want to go check that out, because it's pretty good. But just The Suicide Squad as a movie is amazing. It was everything I expected it to be and so much more. The characters were done to a perfection. There was so much gore that worked so well. The action was brilliant. Starro was brilliant. The team worked together so well. But it was touching and it had brilliant score. It had a great cinematography, amazing writing. Just all of the movie worked so well, and it was exactly what a Suicide Squad movie should be. I gave that 4.5 stars as well. I then watched Fear Street 1994, which is the first of the trilogy that Netflix released. I think it was last month they released it, and it was pretty good. I don't watch a lot of horror movies, not because I have an issue with them, it's just not a genre I've never really fully gotten into, and I think this was the weakest of the 3. It felt a lot like a Stephen King wannabe to me. It just didn't have as compelling characters. The villain was vague, and just a lot of elements didn't work for me, but I still had fun with it. I think it was still a fun movie, so I gave it 3 stars. The next movie was Hot Fuzz, one of my favourite movies ever, without a doubt. Edgar Wright is my favourite director of all time, if you can't tell, and just Hot Fuzz is incredibly fun. It's absolutely hilarious. The action is cool. It just, every single tiny detail they put in this movie works so well, and it all came together so brilliantly. Hot Fuzz is my favourite of the Cornetto trilogy and my second favourite Edgar Wright movie, and it's in my top 10 movies of all time. It's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. The next movie I watched is Holmes & Watson. I also watched that for my podcast, up there. Got it right that time. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Holmes & Watson is in the bottom 3 movies, in my opinion. I think it's incredibly unfunny, badly cast. I normally like Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, but they were terrible in this. And just unfunny, didn't make sense. There's a random song in the middle. It really aggravated me. I'm not going to get angry here because I'm trying not to have a breakdown this month like I do most months. But if you want to see me have a breakdown about Holmes & Watson, then I did it in the podcast because it just didn't make any sense. It just, the writing is so poor. The plot didn't make sense. And all that would be fine for a comedy if it was actually funny. But it is just one of the least funny movies I've ever seen. It's just not good. The accents are bad. They didn't do anything with the rest of the cast apart from John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell. Just none of it worked for me, and I despise this movie. On to a better thing. I watched Bo Burnham's Inside again. I think this is my 4th or my 5th watch, and I still absolutely adore this. I think every song just grows on me more and more with every rewatch because they all have a message there which I just keep discovering more and more about. I think the underlying theme of the show and the message behind these songs. The cinematography is beautiful as well. This time because I've seen it so many times, this time I got to focus on the colour grading, and I just think every shot is so perfectly laid out, and each song has a completely different look. You could show me a screenshot from a random song in Bo Burnham's Inside, and I probably would be able to tell you what song it's from, just because even though it's still filmed in one room, he's just made them all look so unique, which I think is just brilliant. Of course I gave this 5 stars. I then watched Bad Times at the El Royale, a movie one of my friends has been telling me to watch forever, and I thought it was pretty good. I really like the storytelling technique it went for. I think it was very intelligent the way it kept switching between points of view. I think that did get a bit tiring after a while. I think where this movie really does shine, though, is the performances. Chris Hemsworth gives an amazing performance unlike anything I've ever seen from him. It might be hit my favourite performance of his, and Jeff Bridges is just incredible as well, as per always, and his character is really interesting. I just think that the characters are really interesting. The way they interact with each other works really, really well as well. Yes, the pacing did get a bit tiring after a while, and another issue I did have with this movie is I think they focused too much on characters I wasn't as interested in, and didn't focus enough on characters I would have liked to see more of. But, you know, overall, I still think it worked really, really well, and I enjoyed it. 4 stars. Also, I would just like to say that Bad Times at the El Royale has now, entered my vocabulary, and that's just a phrase that I say. So instead of saying bad times, I'll go Bad Times at the El Royale, and now I even do it when I say good times. I say good times at the El Royale. I know this isn't really related or interesting, I just thought I'd let you guys know. I then watched the second movie in the Fear Street trilogy, and that is Fear Street 1978. I think this one was a big improvement on the first. Everything that I said was wrong with it, they did better. There was more compelling characters who had real relationships, and what I think was best about this one was the threat was more specific. We got to meet the character before they started killing people, and I think that worked really well. That the threat was more specific, and it had a great ending, and it was a lot more scary, and it was a lot more gory, and I think so much of this works so much better. I don't care about seeing random characters die if I don't care about them, but in this movie it made me care about them, and I think that worked really, really well, and it also built up a lot more of the mythos of this universe ready for the finale of the trilogy. The next movie I watched was Free Guy. I really enjoyed this. It exceeded my expectations to an extent, because it was kind of Truman Showy, and it kind of had a deeper message to it, and I really, really liked that. I just don't think it fully realised its potential in that department. But as a dumb action movie, it worked really well. It was funny. Ryan Reynolds was great. Taika Waititi, as always, had an absolutely incredible performance, and I'm confident when I say he is one of the only actors in the world who could pull off that performance, just because it was so badly written and it was so dumb. But Taika Waititi read it and he was like, oh yeah, I understand that this is dumb. I now need to surpass that, and just Free Guy worked really well for me. I just really liked the underlying message. I really liked the comedy. I really liked the ending. I think so much of it worked for me, and it was such an intelligent movie, which surprised me. I did give it 3.5 stars because it's not a work of art or anything, but for a blockbuster, I think it was pretty great. Talking about movies that are a work of art, I then watched Paddington. Because I've never seen Paddington 2, I thought I'll watch Paddington, and then I'll watch Paddington 2. And Paddington is incredible. It's so sweet and cute and sincere. And Paddington is just a cutie. It's just, it works so well. It doesn't look down on the audience either. It treats the audience as very intelligent, which I love about a kids' movie. Just my one complaint would be Peter Capaldi's weird Cockney accent, which I hated. 4.5 stars. I love you, Paddington. I then watched Wonder Woman, which is pretty good. I do really like Wonder Woman. I think it's a great origin story. I think Gal Gadot does a great job, and I think this is her best appearance as Wonder Woman. I really, really like it. Just I have an issue with the ending. I think they could have done something better than what they did with Ares, or maybe just not have used Ares at all and not have any villain at the end of the movie. I think that could have worked well. But Chris Pine's great, Gal Gadot's great, the world building is incredible, and I think the real crux of this movie, the bit that works amazingly for me, is Wonder Woman's journey to understanding humanity and meeting humanity and learning about war. I think that's the best part of the movie for me, because that worked really, really well. I then watched the finale of the Fear Street trilogy, 1666, and I think this was the best one. I think this trilogy just keeps getting better and better and better. I suppose it's that on the camera, isn't it? So much of this worked for me. It told 2 stories, for those of you who don't know it. So much for this worked for me. It told 2 stories for those of you who haven't seen it, and those 2 stories are concluded and told brilliantly. It's one in the 1666 world and one in the 1994 world, and the 1994 world is concluded so well, and the 1666 world has such good world building. It's an incredible villainous origin story, and there's a twist in there which I really didn't see coming, and the twist really, really worked me. It was just the perfect cap off to this trilogy, because they really ramped up the stakes for the finale as well. I really loved this trilogy. Just one complaint would be, I feel like the first movie was worse, because they are building towards better things, and I don't think you can get away with that in a trilogy. I then watched John Wick for the first time, and I really liked it. It's not my sort of movie. It's not my cup of tea, to speak in my native tongue. I'm not a fan of just these movies that are all action. I think Keanu Reeves did do a really good performance. Just the action wasn't as great as I was expecting, because that's what everyone talks about this movie about. And it's got some really good cinematography at times, but apart from that, it was just pretty good. It wasn't as amazing as a lot of people seem to find it, in my humble opinion. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Talking about... No, I don't have a good segue. I watched Shazam next, which I love with all my heart. It's my second favourite DCEU movie. Just Shazam, great character, one of my favourite superheroes of all time, and the movie does him perfectly to a T. It's a perfect origin story. It's a perfect Christmas movie. It's a perfect superhero spoof. This is the kind of thing Deadpool could be, because I'm a strong believer that Deadpool doesn't have to be R-rated or 15 if you're from the UK. It's a perfect high school drama. It just melds so many genres together, and they all fit together so well, and they all work so perfectly together. Just Shazam is a great character. It's got a surprisingly good villain. It's got a strong message. It's funny. It's absolutely hilarious, and it's just really, really cool. I could talk about this movie forever. I really, really love it. It's one of my favourite superhero movies, I think. Definitely one of my favourite DC movies, and I gave it 4 stars. Okay, guys, it's time to talk about the big one. Woo! It's Paddington 2. That was... I'm not wooing again. Okay. This Dilogy, that's a movie series with 2 series, I'm currently ranking them on my channel, is like the Mario to Peter Rabbit's Wario. Because Paddington 1 and Paddington 2 and Peter Rabbit 2 are similar on the surface level, and they are so different when you look deeper, because even their premises are quite similar about Paddington and Peter Rabbit, but Paddington has such a heart and such a soul, and it's so sweet and earnest, and it treats its audience as intelligent people, where Peter Rabbit, the Dilogy, which I don't hate, it is artificial and can seem bloated and at times is unfunny, and my main takeaway from it is it feels so artificial and fake, where Paddington is just so earnest. Just Paddington is miles better. Paddington 2 is one of my favourite movies ever now I've actually seen it. It's an amazing showcase. It's an amazing showcase of British talent, and overall just an absolutely sweet and hilarious and earnest. I keep saying earnest, but it's just, that's the big takeaway for me. And it's intelligent, and it's funny. It's so funny, and it's cute, and I just love Paddington with all my heart, and Paddington 2 is incredible. Obviously, I gave Paddington 2 5 stars. I then watched Iron Man 3, which was better than I remembered it being. I really struggled with how to rate this movie, because there is so much uniqueness and intelligence to it, but so much of it isn't fully utilised. Like, it does an amazing job at showing Tony's PTSD and showing his struggle after the first Avengers movie. And I really love that about this movie, but a lot of other characters ignore it in a way that doesn't feel addressed enough for me. While Robert Downey Jr. does an amazing job, I think this is his best performance as Iron Man, and it's got some really unique action, and I really like the Mandarin twist. Just Aldrich Killian did not work at all for me, and I think that's the big problem with this movie, is the villain of Aldrich Killian and the extremists, and Pepper Potts doesn't work particularly well in this movie for me. But I really enjoy the different direction this takes compared to a lot of MCU movies. Like, the narration is new, the tone is new, the way it addresses his PTSD is only done in this movie and hasn't been touched since in the MCU, which I really appreciate. So overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. Yeah, I'm just a bit confused about how to feel about this movie overall. I then watched Twilight, which is an incredibly stupid movie. I talked about this on my podcast this way, and we had a guest on who was West is Lonely on TikTok, and it was really fun to talk about Twilight, and I think talking about it on the podcast definitely made me appreciate the movie more, although we did just make fun of it, because I think it's got a really good aesthetic, apart from the horrible blue and green filter they put over the entire movie. But like, how the characters look is really good, just how they act and how they talk is not good at all. It's cringy at times, it's laugh out loud funny when it's not supposed to be. Just especially Edward and Bella, just weird writing. Edward does some weird stuff and it's not addressed, but there's some really good stuff here, like Charlie and Bella. Charlie, who's the dad, I think their relationship is genuinely amazing, and it feels real, and it works so well, and it evolves throughout the movie, which I really like. And I really like the soundtrack, and then there's the baseball scene, which is incredible as well. So Twilight does have its good moments, just overall it's cringy, it's got this horrible filter over it, and the characters just act weirdly. I gave it 2 stars. I then watched Prisoners, which is my podcast co-host's Fluffy Duffy's favourite movie, and I've never seen it until now, and I really loved it. Don't tell him I said that. If he asks, say I really hated it, because I can't be seen agreeing with him. But yeah, I went in it with high expectations and I wasn't disappointed. It tells these 2 stories with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal's characters, and they both kind of bounce off each other and feed off each other and grow into the bigger picture so well. And they set up so many so many suspects for the crime that this movie is built around. But every single clue that is given, every single little detail, is fed into in the bigger picture, in the conclusion of this. But they don't tell you all the answers. You figure out a lot of them yourself. I think it's the perfect balance of explaining the mystery to you and the vagueness and making you figure it out yourself, which is a really clever thing to do. The performances, of course, are phenomenal, especially from Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. They are just something to watch, and I think it's got a really great score as well, some really interesting cinematography. Just the core of this movie, this mystery, works so well to me, because they just gave you so many clues and just delivered on every single one of them. Because I was watching this movie and I was like, surely these all can't be relevant. But they all were relevant, and I absolutely loved that. I gave this movie 5 stars. I then watched What We Do in the Shadows, Taika Waititi's third movie, and I really love this movie. I think it might just be his funniest movie. It's not my favourite, but it might be his funniest just because the premise is genius. There's so many little jokes within the world building which work so well, and it's just so many great gags and jokes, and just so much of about these vampires is absolutely hilarious to me. I think this might be his funniest movie for me. Just, it's missing a lot of the heart and a lot of the soul and a lot of the message that you'd expect with Taika Waititi nowadays, and I think that's where this movie falls short to me. It's missing kind of a soul and a heart and like a core emotional connection to these characters, I think, is what I'm trying to say. I'm missing an emotional connection to what's going on in this movie compared to a lot of his other movies. But I still really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's really brilliant. And this month I saved the best till last, and I watched Johnny English, which is just a great comedy. I love Rowan Atkinson and I love this trilogy. Johnny English is so funny because of Rowan Atkinson. There's some good writing in there, but you can predict what all the jokes are going to be. You can predict what all the jokes are going to be before they happen. But just the way Rowan Atkinson acts, or the way he speaks, or whatever it is about his performance with this particular joke, it still makes you laugh, and that's the genius of this movie. I think it's got a good villain and a pretty good premise. It's outlandish enough and serious enough and silly enough, and it's just... Rowan Atkinson's incredible. Have I said that already? I gave it 3 stars because it's not incredible. I think a lot of the later ones, number 2 is probably the best one, but I still really enjoy it as a movie. I think it works. Okay, cool. That's all the movies I watched this month. Next month, I'm going to have a different background. I'm not going to be in this room anymore while filming, so look forward to that. Please remember to like. Please remember to comment if you disagree or agree with anything I said. I do enjoy reading your guys' comments. And of course, please remember to subscribe. Thank you for getting me to 500 subscribers. That's pretty... cool, if you ask me. And I'll see you next month. I'll have some videos coming up soon. I'm currently writing my DC Phase 2 rewrite. That might be a month or 2, though hopefully I'll try and get it done this month, but we'll see, no promises. And also later on this week or early next week there will be a Shang-Chi review, which I'm really looking forward to watching. And of course next month I'll be back with my September movie diary. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.